You ever see a movie so bad, you actually feel offended? Like, personally attacked? That's this one. It's not just that it's bad. It's the kind of bad that makes you wonder, did anyone even try here? Or was this just a dare? Now, I'm not saying every comic book movie needs a $200 million budget and Oscar-worthy performances. But when your reboot looks like it was shot over a weekend with leftover Halloween props and vibes from a bad sci-fi original, yeah, we've got problems. This wasn't just disappointing. It felt like watching someone fail a group project even though the cheat sheet was taped to the desk. You knew what you had to do. You just didn't. But here's the thing. On paper, this movie should have worked. Gritty folk horror, an iconic comic arc, and a totally different vibe from the last reboot. So, how did it go so wrong? Let's dive into how one of the most promising horror comic adaptations managed to completely faceplant. Alright, let's set the stage real quick. This wasn't just some random horror flick. It was yet another reboot of Hellboy. Yeah, again. Someone in Hollywood really wants this franchise to work. This time, the pitch was, let's make it low budget and scary, go full R-rated, and supposedly stay closer to the original comics. And to be fair, they picked a great story. The Crooked Man is one of the darkest, creepiest Hellboy arcs out there. If you've read it, you know it's basically gothic horror meets Appalachian folklore. Pure nightmare fuel in the best way. Directing, Brian Taylor, the dude behind Crank and Gamer. An odd choice for subtle horror, right? Still, maybe he wanted to prove he could do something different. David Harbour, gone. In comes Jack Kesey, talented but pretty unknown. No offense, but if you ask 10 people on the street who he is, maybe one could answer. So, smaller cast, lower stakes, more grounded tone. That could have worked. A Hellboy film that feels like a spooky campfire tale? Yes, please. But what we got felt like someone made a Hellboy film without understanding why people love Hellboy. And that's the thing. It didn't just lack money, it lacked vision. So, let's talk about the biggest letdown here, the writing. Because if the script ain't working, nothing else really matters, right? On paper, a creepy folk horror story set in the Appalachian woods, that's awesome. But the way they wrote it, it was just bland. Characters with zero chemistry, conversations that felt like they were ripped straight from a generic horror movie template. You've got Hellboy, who's supposed to be this larger-than-life, sardonic demon with a heart. But here, he's basically a cardboard cutout. Jack Kesey tried, sure, but the lines he was given, man, they didn't give him anything to work with. And it's not just Hellboy. Everybody felt like they were phoning it in. The Crooked Man himself, who should be this nightmarish boogeyman, was just another monster in the dark. Just, here's your villain, have fun. Even worse, the script never took the time to earn its big horror moments. In good horror, you build tension, you let it simmer. But this script was like, here's a monster, now here's another one. Oh, you're not scared. Well, here's a jump scare. It's like they didn't trust the story to be spooky on its own. And that's such a waste, because the Crooked Man in the comics is all about atmosphere, creeping dread, weird folklore, the sense that something ancient and evil is just out of sight. But this movie didn't let that breathe. It just plowed ahead, scene after scene, without giving us a chance to feel the weight of what was happening. It was a movie that looked like horror, but it never really felt like horror. Alright, so if the writing wasn't bad enough, the production itself had all the hallmarks of a budget horror flick on life support. The whole thing was shot in Bulgaria, which isn't a bad choice in itself. Lots of movies shoot there to save money, but in this case, you can kind of feel it. The sets, they just didn't have that authentic, lived-in vibe you'd expect for something as eerie as the Crooked Man story. Everything looked like it was thrown together in a hurry. Cheap-looking sets, and lighting so dark you couldn't tell what was going on half the time. And let's talk about the timeline. It's been reported that principal photography started in March and wrapped in May 2023. That's about 2.5 months, which is quick for a creature-heavy horror film. It's not 20 days and done, but you can still feel that tight schedule bleeding into the final product. It's like there wasn't enough time to polish things up, to make it look and feel like something that's actually spooky and immersive. There's also this sense of corners being cut everywhere. The creature effects that should have been scary, kinda laughable. The folklore atmosphere that should have pulled you in, mostly just generic woods. In the end, it's not just about a small budget. Plenty of low-budget horror movies have nailed it with creativity and atmosphere. But this one, it just felt like they were racing to meet a deadline, not trying to create something people would actually want to remember. You know what really stings about all of this? Hellboy fans have been dying for a good adaptation of this character for years. Ever since Guillermo del Toro's take, people have been waiting for a return to that weird mythic world filled with monsters, folklore, and heart. Del Toro's films, they felt like passion projects. Like he actually understood what makes Hellboy so cool. There was humor, tragedy, wonder, even melancholy. They weren't just comic book movies. They were gothic fairy tales. This latest attempt, it felt like a studio just tossing out another Hellboy flick to see if it would stick. It's not that fans didn't want it, they absolutely did. But you can't just slap the name Hellboy on a rushed horror B-movie and expect people to cheer. That's not how fandom works. And that's the real heartbreak. The Crooked Man is one of the best Hellboy stories. It's creepy, emotional, atmospheric. Fans were hyped for that. We were ready to love this. But instead, what we got felt half-baked, like no one involved truly understood why people care about this character in the first place. And for fans who've stuck around through reboot after reboot, hoping someone would finally get it right, that just feels like a slap in the face. Let's talk about what might have doomed this movie before it even had a chance. The marketing. Or really, the total lack of it. Yeah, there was a trailer, but it came and went without leaving a dent. No Comic-Con presence, barely any social media push, and zero behind-the-scenes hype. It just sort of appeared quietly, like it didn't even want you to notice it dropped. And in today's world, where even tiny indie horror films can go viral with clever teasers or fan-driven campaigns, this one felt like it didn't even try. No mystery, no clever rollout, no buzz. Just a basic teaser and then silence. That's a problem, especially for a franchise with a rocky track record. If anything, this reboot needed to shout from the rooftops. Instead, all we got were a few stills, a forgettable trailer, and then, boom, release day. It almost felt like the studio had already written it off, and if the people making the movie don't care enough to promote it, why should anyone else? No buzz, no audience. That's how you end up forgotten before you even hit theaters. Here's the part that really stings. It absolutely could have worked. This wasn't some hopeless cash grab. The Crooked Man is one of Hellboy's most haunting and visually rich stories. It's full of creepy folklore, gothic vibes, and that slow-burning dread that gets under your skin. Imagine if they had leaned into that, made it a quiet, unsettling folk horror set in the Appalachian backwoods. Let the setting breathe, cold, cursed, heavy with atmosphere. You know, the kind of horror that doesn't scream at you with jump scares, but creeps up and lingers long after the credits roll. That's what this could have been. It didn't need to be big or flashy. It needed to be strange, quiet, and deeply unnerving. A horror story that makes you squirm, not from gore or noise, but from the feeling that something is just wrong. Honestly, the small budget could have worked in its favor. Some of the best horror films didn't cost much. They just had vision and patience. They knew how to do more with less, but instead, they rushed it. They stripped it down to the most basic plot points and left the mood, the tone, and the heart behind. It's not that the story failed, the execution did, and that's what makes it so frustrating. So, let's be real here. This wasn't just a bad movie. It was a wasted opportunity. The kind of flop that doesn't just hurt the box office, but hurts the fans too. This reboot had everything going for it on paper. A fan-favorite horror storyline, a darker tone, a chance to redeem the franchise after the 2019 reboot didn't land. And yet somehow, it managed to blow it again. Between the rushed production, lifeless script, weak character work, and complete lack of atmosphere, this movie felt more like a placeholder than a real attempt at storytelling. Like something that existed just to keep the IP alive, instead of actually doing something cool with it. And the saddest part, there's probably gonna be hesitation now when someone actually comes along with a good Hellboy idea. Studios will look at this flop and say, guess people just don't care anymore, when that's not true at all. People care a lot, but we can smell laziness a mile away. What Hellboy needs isn't another reboot. It's a creative team that genuinely understands the character, the world, and what makes his story special. Something weird, dark, emotional, and mythic. Something with soul. It's the same problem we've seen with other comic book adaptations too. People keep thinking it's about costumes and catchphrases when really, it's about tone, identity, and character. Hellboy isn't just a monster hunter. He's a reluctant weapon with a human heart. That's powerful stuff when done right. If you're still here, you probably feel the same frustration. So, let's talk about it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What went wrong? What would you have done differently? And if you want to see more deep dives like this, hit like and maybe even subscribe. Because, honestly, it's time for Hellboy to finally get the movie he deserves.